Hi everyone, my name is Omar and I've been learning languages since 2020. I started with French in 2020 and then Spanish in 2022 et maintenant je pense que mon niveau de français il est assez bien. Donc aujourd'hui je voulais vous parler à comment vous pouvez apprendre le français. Et j'ai trop de vidéos à propos des langues. J'ai une vidéo ici, ici. Mais aujourd'hui je veux parler juste à propos du français. And also, if you don't have time to watch the whole video, I'll summarize a lot of what I'm saying in the description down below, so feel free to check it out. But honestly, I think watching the whole video will be very helpful, but I might be biased. Anyways, on to the first step. Now, the first and most important thing you want to learn is how to conjugate verb être and verb avoir. Now you're gonna be using verb être and verb avoir in like 90% of your conversations. So starting off with them is so important. And now, what is verb être and verb avoir? It's essentially learning how to say I am, you are, he or she is, all the way till they are. And then for verb avoir, it's I have, you have, he or she has, all the way till they have. So verb être would be je suis, tu es, il est, all the way till ils sont. And verb avoir would be j'ai, tu as, il a, all the way till ils ont. Now I'll put the link down in the description there's this website that has all the conjugations for them. So I'll put the link down below. It should be very helpful. And that's the first thing you want to start with, because with these expressions, or rather with these verbs, you're going to be able to conjugate and make all your sentences. Now after you've learned verb être and avoir, you now want to memorize the 100 most commonly used verbs in the language. And now you don't have to learn how to conjugate them in all the forms, but at least know how to say them in the form of I eat, you eat, he or she eats. So for example, if the verb was to eat, which is manger, you would learn how to say je mange, tu manges, il ou elle mange. And now you would do this for the 100 most commonly used verbs. And now why is this so important? Because now that you know verb être and avoir, and you're hopefully gonna learn the 100 most commonly used verbs, you can now start to talk to yourself in French whenever you do an action. So for example, let's say you're about to have your breakfast. You would just tell yourself, je mange. You're about to leave the house. You would tell yourself, je quitte. And every time you find yourself doing an action, you want to actively turn your French brain mode on, and you want to say the action that you're doing in French. Now, when I was learning French and Spanish, kids' TV shows were a game changer, because I told myself, how do kids learn languages? And a big portion of it is through the TV shows they watch. Like when we were kids and we would watch TV shows, it would help us improve our English, or it would help us improve the second language that we had in our lives, or even the first language that we had. So I treated myself as if I was a child, because I was a child in French and I was a child in Spanish. I was learning all these words for the first time. Now, when you're first watching the TV show, it's totally okay to not know like most of the words being said. That's actually what's supposed to happen, because you're still learning the language. But you don't want to write down every single word you don't know, because then you're going to hate the process and you're not going to end up learning the words, because it's going to be like a list of 100 words. But when you're watching the TV show, or like the kids' TV show, if you realize that there's a word or an expression that's repeated more than 3 times, write that expression or word down. Or if there's an expression or word that you like, write it down. And try to have 5 to 10 words/expressions per episode. But here's the important part. When you finish the episode, make sure you translate the words so you know what they mean. And try to incorporate these words in your day-to-day activities. So for example, let's say you learn the word red, which is rouge in French. Whenever you see a red object when you're walking on the street, you can just tell yourself rouge. And if you learn the word blue, which is bleu, when you see something blue, you would go like, ça c'est bleu. And I know this might sound weird, but I promise you, the whole point of this is to exercise the French muscle in your brain. And the more you get your brain used to, or your mind used to thinking in French and saying the names of objects in French, the stronger the muscle will get and the more you'll remember the words. And in the same stage, when you're watching the kids' TV shows, you want to add sticky notes all over your house with the objects labeled in French. So on your fridge, you would have a sticky note that says frigo. On your desk, you would have a sticky note that says bureau. And you would do this for all the objects in the house. And anytime you pass by the object, you want to actively say the name of the object in French. Now, of course, there are times when you might forget to do this, which is completely fine, but you want to be proactive with it. So when you're opening the fridge, you might be very hungry and just wanting to take the food, but try to remember to say the word fridge in French when you're there. And the same thing applies to all the objects in the house. Now, I want you to stay in the kids' TV show and sticky notes phase for a while, because it's in this phase that you're going to start to build your vocabulary. Now, it's not going to be amazing, but it's going to be just enough where you're able to start to formulate some sentences. Now, you're gonna still struggle to understand a lot of what is being said because a lot of the time people will speak quickly to you, but at least you'll be able to give a message. Now, the message might be conjugated like incorrectly, but at least you'll be able to say something. And when you're comfortable enough to just even express yourself a bit, and like I said, it doesn't need to be a correct sentence. It just needs to be a sentence where the person you're speaking to has an idea of what you're talking about. When you reach that, you want to find someone who's patient in your life that speaks French. And you want to try to speak to that person at least once or twice a week, where you just say what you did in your day to them in French, and then they can repeat that back to you. So you'll be practicing your speaking skills and your listening skills. And now obviously, because that person knows you're still learning, they're gonna tell you about their day at a slower pace, which is gonna be very helpful because you're gonna start to improve the listening skills in French. And during the stage when I was practicing with someone, something that really helped me out was that I started reading kids comic books. So I bought all the Tintin comic books, which is like a famous French comic book series, and it was so helpful for me because I was then able to enrich my vocabulary even more. So when I was having the conversations with my cousin, I had so many more words that I could use to explain my day. And now when you get more comfortable speaking in the present, you now want to slowly introduce how to talk about yourself in the future. And now, at least for the first few years when you're talking French, from my personal experience, all you need to learn is how to conjugate the future of the verb aller, which is je vais, tu vas, il ou elle va, all the way till ils vont. And now what these are essentially you just saying I will, you will, he or she will, all the way till they will. Now before you say any verb for the future, all you have to do is to say je vais and then you put the verb unconjugated. So for example, if the verb is manger, to eat. If you want to say I am eating, you would just say je mange. But what if you want to say I will eat? All you would do is you would say je vais manger. And you can do this with all the verbs. So for example, I am running would be je cours. I will run, je vais courir. And now I'll put a link down below with this future conjugation, which will help you. It's very easy to follow along because all you have to do is je vais, tu vas, il va. The list down below will be very helpful. And I'll explain it a bit in the description as well. Now for the past tense, it's a little bit more complicated. But again, from my personal experience, at least at the beginning, if you learn the passé simple, then it's more than enough. And essentially what it is you would use that verb avoir that I talked about earlier, which is j'ai, tu as, il a, all the way till ils ont. You would use that and then you would put the verb. So for example, same idea with manger. If you want to say I eat, you say je mange. But if you want to say I ate, you would say j'ai mangé. And now you can use this with most of the verbs. There are some exceptions, but at this stage, you don't need to know these exceptions. And now when you get more comfortable with the future and past tense, you can now start to watch French YouTubers. Now ask yourself, what are things that I'm passionate about? Maybe you like cooking. So find a YouTuber that speaks in French that talks about cooking. If you like football, find French YouTubers that talk about football. Ask yourself, what am I passionate about? And then find a YouTuber that speaks in French that talks about that passion. Because at the beginning, again, it's going to be quite frustrating when you're not understanding a lot of what's being said, but you'll start to learn more and more lingo with the topic that you're passionate about. Now, hopefully by this point, you've absorbed so much French content. And now when I reached a point where my vocabulary was starting to get better, I started to journal in French. And now when I say journal, you don't have to write about all your emotions and how you're feeling. You can simply just write down what you did in your day. Or you can write down what you want to do tomorrow. Or if you want to write about your emotions, sit down and write about your emotions in French. But the point is for you to get used to expressing yourself in French. And when you're writing down all what you're writing in French, like I said before with the speaking, it doesn't all need to be correct. As long as you're just letting the words flow, you're again training that French muscle in your mind. And the more you get comfortable thinking in French and retrieving French words from your mind, the faster you will get at speaking with people and the more comfortable you will feel talking in French with people. Now, if you live in a city where there are French speakers, please, please, please speak to strangers in French. Now, I understand if you're a bit shy to talk to your friends in French because they might make fun of you or whatever. Sure, that makes sense. But with strangers, they're not going to even remember you. So anytime you get an opportunity to speak to someone in French, just speak. And if you get nervous in the middle, just tell them, can we switch to English or switch to your first language? So the more you practice with people, the more you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations, I promise you, the better you will get. I promise you, the faster you get comfortable with making new mistakes, the faster you will learn the language and the more you will enjoy the journey. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sorry if the video is a bit too long, but I wanted to explain with a bit more detail because I know it's very difficult to learn a language on your own, but I hope that some of the things that I shared today will help you on your language learning journey. And like I always say, this is the Dibos way, find your own way. I promise you, just because this way worked for me doesn't mean that it's gonna work for everyone else exactly the same. Take what you like from the video and then add your own spice to it. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and I hope to see you soon. Peace!